morning. We're here with André Burdet, which is Vice President, Product Management and Strategy and Head of E-Mobility Business at Hitachi ABB Power Grids. So last year, Hitachi completed the takeover of ABB Power Grids. So may you be more specific on which are the consequences of this purchase on Hitachi activities in the bus business, please?
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for having me here today with you. So obviously, we have gone through a period where we have Hitachi ABB Power Grid joint venture that has been formed with Hitachi and also ABB. So at Hitachi ABB Power Grid, we have been active in the e-mobility business for more than 10 years now, notably known with our grid emotion flash, or called Dozer technology, that we have installed at various sites, for instance, in Switzerland, in Geneva, but also in France, in Nantes, and now we're going to have this technology in more sites going forward. And we also recently launched our grid emotion fleet offering, which is a very compact and large-scale type of charging system where you need multiple charging at a given site, like a depot or a logistics center. So we are active in this field, and obviously joining Hitachi now will actually boost even more our ability to be active in the e-mobility sector, especially in the e-bus sector, by having not only the HAPG capabilities, but also the Hitachi capabilities around e-mobility, whether through our IT, Vantara, but also through our other activities we have within Hitachi. So I would say this move is really kind of growing the aspect of the full solution provider that Hitachi is delivering to customers.
Okay, so when we are talking about e-buses and electric vehicles in general terms, the word which is usually mentioned is system. So a system where the infrastructure has a significant importance.
Yes, so I think system obviously can be seen at various levels. First is when we think of system for a bus line or bus transport networks, the system is really like all the different vehicles that you have, the different buses that you have are going to be coordinated in a manner that you're going to deliver the timetable you have. And sometimes there are very, very strict and hard demand on the timetable. You have, for instance, a bus that needs to go out of a depot or certain station every 2 minutes. You can have hundreds of different stations to serve, and certainly thousands and thousands of passengers to serve every day. And that should really arrive on time because they may go to also another type of transportation. So if we think the system is first, we think about the collection of vehicles and their operation that you have. Then the second degree of the system is where you're going to service and make sure that those vehicles are going to be always available. So especially the depot is a very important piece into this system, and how you're going to manage the depot, especially if you move to electric mobility, how are you going to make sure that you have an optimal type of charging of the various e-buses that you can have, but also from the optimization of the charging, or you're going to optimize the use of your fleet with data that you get and where you can concentrate at the depot, and then also organizing the depot operation in terms of maintenance of the different buses you have. And then obviously then the third level in terms of the system is the energy that is related to your mobility system, and how you're going to make sure that you have an efficient, from an OPEX perspective and cost perspective, an efficient mode of operation by managing also your energy and all the services that you need.
Well, you mentioned before the grid emotion system that your company launched last year. So which is the genesis of this technology, and which is the issues, the challenges the system is addressed to solve? And maybe do you have any case study to mention, please?
Yeah, thank you. So the consideration, as we were active through our grid emotion flash for several years and talking with different bus operators and public transport entities, is that we were feeling that until relatively recently, the market has been, in terms of e-buses, has been mostly around, we try 1, 2, 3, 10, 15 buses, and we need a little bit of chargers. So we just procure some chargers, try the operation maybe in a given line, and see how it changes our operation, which is a very important step to pass. But recently, due to regulation, the need of more sustainable transportation, now we can see that operators goes to the next stage, which is, okay, how it's going to be at large scale. And once you talk about large scale, you need to have, not like 5 type of charger, but you need to completely retrofit your depot, or maybe even build new depot in certain cases, where you will need to have a lot of charger, and also you will need to connect to the grid with a higher power level, and also use the space that you have. So the consideration of grid emotion fleet has been really around, like, I'm not concerned about the charger, I'm concerned about when I need a lot of them, and how I'm going to minimize the footprint in a given depot, as an example, or logistics center, of the charging system, and make sure that in terms of the maintenance and operation of this charging system is going to be concentrated. So grid emotion fleet is a way where you concentrate the whole infrastructure into one location, the electrical infrastructure, from the grid to the plug, and then you can have a more seamless and more effective type of operation, and also cost-effective type of operation. So in terms of use of the grid emotion fleet, it has been obviously already installed in the field. We have, for instance, an installation in Milano with ATM, and we also now having various customers that have been, let's say, excited about having this technology at their sites, and we are on the execution of various projects with grid emotion fleet in Europe, but also in Asia, and also we're looking at other parts of the world.
Well, you mentioned the topic of bus depot conversion. So it looks like we are indeed witnessing kind of a trend towards depot charging in the e-bus field. And do you think this trend will be confirmed in the future? Because in Hitachi's portfolio, it features a solution that was formerly known as Dozer in Geneva, and gained kind of a lot of attention in the bus field.
There are different needs and different duties, and our grid emotion portfolio is actually looking at every different type of needs, and making sure we can, at the end of the day, optimize the operation of an operator. So if you look at bus lines, for instance, there are some cases where you have relatively, let's say, small passenger capacity will go over a relatively short line distance. And then on the other side, you may have also very high passenger capacity needs over a very long distance, like more BRT type of system. And then high frequency also of the line. So if you combine frequency, passenger capacity, distance of the line, it will affect tremendously the type of battery and the sizes that you need into your bus, and then the overall cost of the solution. So there are cases where you want to have a good trade-off between the amount of batteries you need and the energy, let's say, security that you have in all time in your bus, that you want to charge en route. And this is the concept of flash charging, or Dozer, which is very useful, for instance, for high passenger capacity, high frequency, or long distances. There are also other cases where you say, okay, I don't need that big battery because maybe my capacity is lower, my frequency is lower. So it would be sufficient to charge at the depot overnight and then to run during the day with your bus. And then in between, we have what we call opportunity charging, where you can just charge at the terminal. So really our approach to the market is to be able to answer all kinds of needs, and then to have the right suitable solution. Again, thinking of first the operation of the operator with their bus.
Thank you. And André, in an article of yours, you mentioned the role of electric mobility hubs in view of future mobility. So may you outline which is the meaning of this expression, and how should we imagine these hubs in the framework of public transport systems?
We're thinking in terms of e-mobility hub, obviously for the public transport system, but also for any type of commercial fleet as well. So the idea is to say that there is a good portion of the vehicle market at large where you have hubs to operate what we could call fleets. So typical example of hubs that are already existing today are public transportation hubs like a depot, but it could be also a logistic center where you want to distribute goods from this center with light trucks as an example, or it can be also a center to manage like car fleets from where you dispatch for passenger, your fleet could be taxi, but it could be anything else. So in those hubs, you want to manage your fleet from a maintenance perspective, but also in terms of the energy perspective. And what you realize is that it was hub because of the amount of vehicles that you have, you're going to have a certain amount of chargers needed. And so there will be an energy play here. Until today, you use fuel, so you just put it in a tank and you just wait to fill in. But now that we connect to the grid, there is this idea of saying, well, I can actually take the electricity from the grid when it is cost effective for me. But if I have also a lot of vehicles that I don't use for a certain reason, I can also resell perhaps to the grid this electricity, or I can have a storage unit nearby my logistic hub where I'm going to, be able to exchange energy through the storage unit. So which means really essentially at the end of the day, you end up by having a hub that is not only a hub in terms of mobility, but also a hub in terms of the energy. And this is also something that will be, of course, a strong consideration. Maybe it's not the operator who will want to operate the energy side. It could be also other parties in partnership with the operators. And lastly, the other idea of the e-mobility hub is not on the energy side, but on the mobility side. You can imagine that you can have different modes of transportation as those hubs. For instance, going from a bus to a car or any other things. So this is really where the idea revolves around, and where we're going to have different market stakeholders participating and having certainly some business model innovation, including X as a service as an example.
Yeah, I must say such perspective is quite fascinating. But I mean, André, is there any chance to imagine the transition to e-vehicles without an increasing role of digitalization and IoT?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, this is what is going to make the difference, certainly in this field, as is in many others. So the crude way of thinking EV charging is to think it's going to be the same as a fuel petrol station. I just come, fuel my car, my bus, whatsoever, and I go. And once you switch to EV charging with electricity, you suddenly have a complete new range of data available because of the new type of charging system that you have, and which enables you to not only think about those depot, for instance, as a charging station, but to think about a control and command location in order to manage your fleet. So say, for instance, I have a broken tire, I can get the information up front and then manage my operation so that I can take back the right tire. It can be about what's the state of charge of my vehicle, and then can I use some of the energy if I'm not using those vehicles in the future for something else, and many other things, obviously. So the idea of IoT is really to say, okay, we have the convergence of clean energy and EV charging together with digital. And if we put them together, certainly then we can have a new type of business model, new ways of operation, and so on and so forth. And this will be the game changer at the end, because it will reflect back on the operation of people as opposed to just the equipment itself.
Well, then we see there is a common feelings in the industry that aside of course, financing, the topic of grid capacity is one of the main barriers to solve in order to, allow a large scale adoption of EV, battery electric vehicles in the specific e-buses. Do you think we should consider other barriers or challenges?
No, financing is definitely going to be a key, but I think it is actually an opportunity because the beauty with EV charging is that and linked together with the digital aspect that we were just talking about is you can imagine many types of business model, and especially the idea of X as a service. So for instance, say that you are an operator that really wants to focus on your fleet operation. You may think that in terms of the energy side, I'm not necessarily wanting to develop my core competencies here, but work with partners who will be able to manage all the energy side of my e-vehicle system. And therefore, you may actually rather want to have a service, including not spending the CapEx, with a third-party partner, which will organize the EV charging side of it and the energy management, and you're going to have a fee, for instance, to get the energy and the services to operate your fleet, as an example. But of course, those bring the new type of financing model that maybe we are not used into the industry. And I think it's up to all the participants to understand how this scheme works and bring the right solution. But if we go beyond the financing side and go, what are the other important factors? Obviously, the regulation and willingness to switch will be a very important factor as well. And we see in countries that have policies that kind of are ambitious in terms of clean transportation, then it really follows behind in terms of the business viability of having e-mobility going at a wide scale. So I think regulation and policies pushing for an open market and a fair competition, but things that will favor clean mobility will be also hugely important going forward.
I mean, they put charging grid capacity, barriers to EV adoption, and opportunities in the transition to e-vehicles. I guess we mentioned most of the topic involved in this wide topic as transition to zero-emission buses. So thank you very much, André.
Thank you very much. Thank you.